a beautiful three-storey villa on the side of Lake Wannsee in Berlin. A wonderful dining room with crystal chandeliers, velvet-clad chairs, multiple lights and glass arches completing the chamber. Only nowadays we don't savour those smells of culinary masterpieces. We don't hear the tingling of table utensils, the chinking of glasses, or the jokes about the weather and the beauty of Berlin. In fact, the villa became famous for a conference held there on Tuesday 20th of January 1942. The upper echelons of the Third Reich gathered for the conference theme, the final solution to the Jewish question. What was the final solution to the Jewish question? Outright annihilation. The death factories in Europe were already running at full capacity. Six million Jews were massacred in all of Europe, including 1.5 million children. But in the Lithuanian towns and villages, the final solution to the Jewish question was already implemented in the summer and autumn of 1941. The first Jews were killed not far from their homes, before the Nazis arrived. It was the work of the Lithuanian Activist Front. And soon the bloody wave overflowed to every Lithuanian province. Thousands of innocent Jews, Lithuanian citizens, were relentlessly driven to town squares or to the forest and murdered. Thousands of children were murdered alongside their parents. The Nazis began the executions using not only the Lithuanian units, but also the local police, the government institutions, town dwellers and peasants. At night, the local inhabitants heard the pervasive moans from the overwhelmed ditches. In the autumn, ghettos were established in the bigger cities, but there were no more Jews in the towns to be whipped into those ghettos. Only a few Jews in small towns managed to escape from their collecting places, from the temporary ghettos or their shooting pits. And those who succeeded endured the 3 years fighting to survive. Danger threatened constantly. The Jewish community thrived in Lithuania for many centuries, including more than 200,000 Jews before the war. Nearly all of them perished in the flames of the Holocaust. Only a few percent remained alive. The death sentence was also signed for Moshe, Samuel and Anna Kuklianskis. Born and raised in the small village of Veiseye, the children had either to lie in the pit together with their classmates and friends from the yard, or be asphyxiated in the gas chambers of the death camps. But they survived. For the fourth time after Lithuania's regenerated independence, Moshe Kuklianskis has organized his large family and brought them to Lithuania. Children living in Israel, the Netherlands and in America have to learn much more about those terrible years. Moshe's, Samuel's and Anna's grandchildren want to know for themselves whom they have to thank that they were born.
Alon Kukliansky.
Michal Kukliansky, Kushnil.
Doron Kukliansky.
Shaul Jelikas. Alon Mordel. David Shapiro.
Eyal Osterman.
Aviv Osterman. Tamar Osterman.
Aran Mordel.
I live with my family in America while the others live in Israel. Our uncle's daughter lives here in Vilnius. Our children in Israel and in America have learned about the Holocaust, but it's not the same like to learn from common study. The fate of your own family goes immediately to your heart, not just to your brain, not just to your mind, but you react to it with your heart. It's difficult to perceive how the father and his 3 children survived, the family staying in the territory occupied by the Nazis the entire period of occupation. First in Lithuania, later in the ghetto in Grodno, where from 30,000 Jews, only 200 survived. After the ghetto, 18 months in the Lithuanian forests. Saul Kuklianskys died a long time ago. Anna and Samuel also died. The family experiences are firmly fixed in the heart of Moshe Kuklianskys. Such people leave us slowly and continuously. Their recollections are really valuable.
Jeigu nebūčiau pabėgęs, tai ir aš gulėčiau čia dabar. Jau tik kaulai būtų likę.
If I hadn't have escaped, I would be lying here now. Only my bones would remain. From our family, all our relatives lie here. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins, my childhood friends, my first teacher, and all my acquaintances. Everyone, which I knew very well.
Mano pažįstami visi jų žmonės, kuriuos aš puikiai pažinojau.
I, Moshe Kuklianskys, was born in 1923. I grew up with my sister Anna, 3 years younger than me, and my brother Samuel, 7 years younger than me. My father, Saulius Kuklianskys, was a chemist-pharmacist, and my mother, Zinaida, was a doctor. We grew up in the small but very beautiful village of Veiseye, close to the splendid Lake Anchia, in the extraordinary beautiful Zukia, full of hills, lakes and forests, where many generations of our ancestors lived. When I was 11, I finished at Veiseye school and studied for half a year at Lazie Gibberish Gymnasium. The family then moved to Panevėžys, where I studied for 3 years at the Panevėžys Men's Gymnasium. After that, we went to live in Alytus for a few years, where I finished the Alytus Gymnasium. There we were overtaken by the war. The day before June 21st, late in the evening, after a day of sports competitions, at the official closing ceremony, we were presented with our school certificates. Early the next morning, the explosions woke us up. In order to avoid all the repeating bombardments, we left everything, including nearly all our finances, and went to the suburbs. However, the German military advance was so rapid that it overtook us the next day at Butrimonis. The move lost its meaning, and we turned back. The persecution and jeering of Jews began on the road immediately. The local inhabitants, with and without their white armbands, ostensibly offended us, as if looking for guns, and threatened to finish us off.
Iš kiekvieno namo buvo girdėti propaganda, muzika.
Propaganda and music were heard from each house, and this was all instigation. It was terrifying what they told about us and what people believed. We are exploiters, like this and like this. It's difficult for me to repeat. I heard the radio myself when I went this way.
Aš pats girdėjau šitą per radiją, eidamas tais keliais.
They accused us of all the wrongdoings in the world. Collectively, they identified the Jews with the communists, though none of our family, like the majority of Lithuanian Jews, belonged to the party. The majority of Jews were not associated with this organization, and even if they were, it doesn't mean they are criminals. We were stupefied at that awful hate and malice with which we were confronted and sensed. Until then, we had never heard of the Lithuanian Activist Front, nor about its mischief, and we didn't understand what was happening. Luckily for us, few of our father's contacts appeared among those hostile-minded white armbands. If they wouldn't have been there, I'm not sure about our destiny on this road. Eventually our parents decided that living in such wayward, unsafe and difficult times, it was better to return to our homeland, where our house is, where everyone knew and respected us, and where we had many relatives. We decided to abandon all our belongings, to pass by Alytus and set off for Veselye, even though it was very precarious and any travelling was forbidden for the Jews.
Kai pradėjome eiti per Alavos miestelį iš vieno namo, tai matyti buvo baltaraiščių būstinė, išbėgo vaikėzai, baltaraiščiai, jauni.
When we entered Alovy town, armed teenagers with white armbands ran from one house, which probably was their centre, shouting at us, Jews, communists, to push, to sort us. Hey, you are a communist, go right. You, go left. They were ready to shoot us. This moment somebody rolled from their house, a short, fat man who was very drunk. He approached us and began to talk, also unfavourably. Hey, communist, Jews. He looked at the face and in the eyes of each of us. He approached my father and began to speak. I know you. His words sounded threatening. Do you know me? I know you are the pharmacist from Alytus. So, what's wrong with it, father? Asked him. No, the opposite. You are a good man. Listen, don't hurt him. Let him go with his family. But his subordinates did not agree with him, and arguments started. Finally, they decided not to shoot us, but did not let us go any further. We were forced to go back and try our luck on the way via Alytus and its guarded bridge. Some distance from Alovy, we saw the drunk white armbands commander catching up with us, riding and swinging on his bicycle. One of our companions had a cow. The drunk commander took the cow from him and said that soon the cow's owner would not have any need for the cow, and the cow will be better off with him, the new owner. After that he asked my father to approach him. Father went to him. He said something. Father returned to us and we continued to go. Then we asked father, what did he say to you? He said that yesterday he was in the headquarters, and there they said that all the Jews would be shot. Then he advised me to find such people where I could hide during this period. Everybody laughed and mocked. How it may be to shoot all the Jews? Nobody believed what the drunk man said, and we really forgot his words, because the human common sense couldn't accept it.
Ir mes iš tikrųjų šitą pamiršom, ką jis pasakė. Todėl, kad čia žmogaus sveikas protas negalėjo apimti šitą.
We made those 45 kilometers successfully on foot and managed to reach Veselye, but our worries didn't diminish. We had to find little Samuel. A couple of days later, ignoring the banning for Jews to travel, my mother went to Kaunas to seek out my younger brother. The war had overtaken him in the Palanga children's camp, and so he was not with us. Mother, to all our delight, found him in an orphanage in Kaunas and brought him to Veselye. We were happy to be together, though there were a lot of worries and niggles. A boy had gone away to a children's camp. He was the only one from Alytus, and the war began. What could he do? He ran with his suitcase and, alone, couldn't hold on to it. He, my father, was one of the few children from this camp to stay alive in Lithuania. The others, some were shot, others were taken to Russia. The atmosphere regarding the Jews became continuously worse. The newspapers and radio poisoned the people with hatred. For the first time in our lives, we were confronted with such a crafty, dirty and deceitful hounding, with various restraints and criminal actions.
Iš policijos atėjo pareigūnas ir pasakė, kad
an officer came from the police and said that there was an order for everyone to return where they lived before the war began. We lived in Alytus before the war, so we would have to move out from here and go back to Alytus. Then my mother submitted to him that would it be enough if we had documents that allowed us to leave Alytus. He said, if you can produce such documents from Alytus, then you can call this your living place. Immediately my mother left to get the documents and never returned. She didn't know, nor did we, that the arrests of the Jews, hunting and slaughter had started all around. In some towns, the Jews were already executed. She fell directly into the bloody claws of the drunken hangman. There were gymnasium students among them, and most probably some of my former classmates. Over those days they mocked and tortured, hunted and killed their victims in Alytus prison and in the Vitskeris forest next to the town. We lost our beautiful, energetic, gifted. She completed the gymnasium with a gold medal, our good, devoted and young 44-year-old mother, our healthy and strong 53-year-old father, outliving the loss of his beloved wife, suddenly aged 20 years. We never knew that she was shot. We thought maybe she was hauled off to work or something. I wanted that they would take me to work so I could meet her. Now I know that she fell directly into the executioner's hands. Father used to tell me that his mother was a very brave woman. Her courage became especially evident during the war period. Although she was brave always, she twice crossed the Lithuanian-Polish border illegally. My grandma herself was born in Bialystok and after marriage settled in Lithuania. In order to visit her younger brothers, she had to cross the Lithuanian-Polish border secretly. Grandfather told that when he saw her for the first time in a hospital, she was a doctor and he a pharmacist. At this time there was a typhoid epidemic and there were sick patients isolated in the barracks. The other doctors were scared about typhoid and didn't enter the barracks, but she did.
Говорят, что я на нее похожа. Ее младший брат.
People say I look very much like her. Her younger brother came to visit us in Israel in 1972. This was the first time I saw him. He wanted to meet me very much, since I was named after my grandma. For her brothers, she was like a mother. They became orphans early, and grandmother took care about the younger brothers and of the whole family. My grandmother's brother said that I look like her very much.
Он говорил, что я на нее, да, похожа.
There were rumours and signs that the organised wholesale slaughter of the Jews was being prepared. For sure, we knew only about Liepalingis. We thought it was some vicious deals of fiendish gangs. We didn't want and couldn't believe that it could happen in the cultured and devout society of the 20th century. But we were overwhelmed and ill at ease for the suspicious suspense about our near future. A couple of strangers from Liepalingis were passing by the farm we were working at. They came in to drink some water from the well and brought the monstrous news. That night they killed all the Jews in Liepalingis, and the drunken executioners were boasting and said that the same thing will happen in Vilnius the next night. Who can imagine how I felt then? Even now I cannot say. At the height of our turmoil and shock, as though we were in a drama, a small, thin man by the name of Karolis Jarmala came to our father. He was from the village of Aukštadvaris, not far from Vilnius. According to his father's last will, he offered us refuge at his farm, as thanks to our grandfather's indescribable help to his father, provided in the past. He said to us, our parents were on good terms, and my father just before his death said to me that if I can do anything to thank the Kukliansky's family, I should do it. Because he received very intense help from him and couldn't find an opportunity to thank them, he begged me to find a way to bestow his thanks. The tensed family began to dispute our new situation and possible destiny, still having many unknown parameters. We didn't know what would happen to us, since we didn't know Jarmala. My father never heard about him and didn't even know his name.
Ir visi kaimynai mus atkalbinėjo. Čia buvo toks viešas pasidarimas tarp giminių, tarp mūsų, tarp visų.
All our neighbours urged us not to run. There was a public discussion between relatives, between us, between everyone. They said, Saulius, don't run. Don't go there. Your wife has already gone. You'll lose your children and yourself too. That's what they said to my father. And he? No. Run. The meeting continued late into the night. In the morning we expected to be hauled away, and we still did not know what to do. I saw my brother and sister wanted to sleep. It was autumn and the nights were cold. One wants to sleep in the dark. Now we must run in the dark. I was inclined not to run. Logically, we didn't have to run, but my father thought otherwise. Then he took me in his arms and kissed me intensely. Usually, he was very parsimonious with kisses, but he kissed me and said, "If you respect me, then we go." We made our way through the village, the yards and through the park. My brother and sister behaved obediently, silently, and directed themselves heroically. With adventure, we happily reached Jarmala's homestead. No dog barked, just as Jarmala wanted. Almost 70 years after the crucial events of 1941, Kukliansky's extended family is coming to Veselye for its next visit to meet Sigitas, Karol Jarmala's son. How old were you then? I was 11. 11, and you remember everything? I played with your brother in the yard. Yes, you played with my brother in the yard. The other was somewhat younger. I came to say one more time about your father. I remember him, and I honor him all the time. Whoever visited, my father gave them food and shelter. He didn't look for anything. All our family knows of Jarmala. In the morning, Jarmala went to town to see the situation. He saw the savagery against the Jews, the cruel banishment from their homes, read a notice threatening to kill anyone harbouring any fugitive Jews. He returned home upset and worried. He began to be afraid. I saw that he was afraid. He whispered with his wife, but said nothing to us. He didn't drive us away, but he was under huge tension. I asked if he was afraid. He said, "Yes, child, I am afraid." "Do you want that we go?" He said, "I don't drive you away." I said, "I understand that you don't drive us away, but maybe it's dangerous for you. We don't want you at risk." At this he began to cry, and we decided to leave. We headed south, but only at night. There was little hope to find refuge with someone we knew or didn't know. We went slowly on the side roads, through fields and woods, moving as quickly as the slowest of us. For 3 years the family fought for life. At any moment misfortune could fall. My grandfather had the feeling how to act in different situations. It seems they were followed by a lucky star. The important thing was not to lose yourselves in this situation, but to keep calm inside and to keep your wits about you. If you do this, you can solve many more problems. In the evening or at night, we tapped on the outer windows of remote houses, asking for directions or for food. People reacted differently, some with sympathy, some apathetically, some weeping, regretting our situation. No one confronted us with open hatred or with rejection to extend help. However, no one would give us any day refuge or advice. We were compelled to leave Lithuania. We found one place where my father knew the man very well and thought that he would help us. But he rejected us. We went south and approached the river Nemunas. Suddenly, a young man came running up to us and said he will ferry us to the opposite bank. He told us to hurry. With our help, he extracted a boat with oars from under a house, which stood by the river, and launched it into the water. He ferried us to the other side, gave us a stimulating pep talk, several raising mood-like, whisky, compassionate words, which even now I cannot forget, and he hurried back to his side of the river. We hardly managed to ask his name. He repelled with the oar from the bank and answered, "Kazukas." This angel was Kazys Żukauskas from Bogieda village. I will always remember him with excitement. He said, "You are heading towards the bridge. It's dangerous to go to the bridge. There are patrols there." He said, "I will ferry you across." And he did ferry us. It was Kazys Żukauskas. Moshe visited Lithuania in 1995. The journey to the painful places was filmed by his son. The Kukliansky's family angel, Kazys Żukauskas, still lived in the same village. A patrol stood on the bridge. No one could be let through. I said to my brother, "We have a boat." My brother said, "If you are not afraid, then go. If no one will see," he said, "but these people need to be saved. But if they see you, they will shoot you." I said, "No one will see who is in the boat." I said, "If they go over the bridge, they will all end up in the river." "You are a good and brave man. Later, you brought us shirts. I remember everything. I remember." I only know that 3 years passed after we first met. You had been in the woods and remembered how I was dressed, and even the boots I wore. So what I'm saying, the memory is good. I am very happy that I am still alive to see you, very happy that I can come and meet you all here. And you all can see I am very thankful. Cheers, everyone, until we meet again. Kazys Żukauskas is not alive anymore, but his children always take the opportunity to meet Moshe Kukliansky and his large family. No matter how many years passed, the meetings go with tears of delight and excitement. We never had that experience, but for you, who had passed everything, it's not a shame to cry. He was very intelligent. He understood where we needed to go. He helped us, gave us comfort and hope. Here is a saintly man. Our father never told us of such works. He never boasted of anything. When better times came, then he told. We asked him, "Listen, what moved you to help us? We were strangers to you." He said, "Not complete strangers." I said, "How is it not complete strangers? You didn't know us." He said, "I used to come to Veselye, to the pharmacy, and I saw how your father worked. I saw how he behaved with people. He helped me. I couldn't allow such a person to be wronged." On the other side of the river we met another angel by the name of Maciukewicz in Świętojańskie village. Talking with him we sensed another atmosphere. When we asked him how could it be that he wasn't afraid to accommodate us, he answered that there wasn't anything he had to be afraid of. He knew the Germans, the paths they used, and the times of their visits, and he wasn't afraid of his neighbours, because they thought the way he did. Although we said we were out of money, he received us favourably. I can even say hospitably, even though he didn't know us. Twice he offered us food at the table in his house and let us sleep under his roof. He said that in Grodno, Jews lived freely in their homes. He advised us to go to Grodno and proposed to accompany us on the byroads and through the woods to the town. As he said, he did. He took us to Grodno in relays. 3 or 4 escorts passed us from one to another. I suppose he was a member of a humanitarian or other secret organization. And in Grodno we met an angel. It was my father's former neighbour from Veseje, who was also a pharmacist, the owner of Grodno's large pharmacy, Sidia Lubo Schwarzover. She received us with friendliness and tenderness. She took us to live in her house, gave us food, and provided us with clothes, bed linen and documents. We lived with Sidia Luba about a month. One day, the 1st of November 1941, we were taken to the ghetto. It was very difficult for us, for refugees. We had to keep the secret that we were not locals. Living, hygiene and subsistence conditions were all difficult. After a hard compulsory working day, we received food coupons, but no actual financial payment. There was nowhere to wash, nothing substantial to eat, and nowhere to sleep, nowhere to relax, nowhere to earn money. We had nothing to sell or exchange to supplement the food. 2 families lived together, 8 people in a small room with an entrance from the kitchen, and crossing 2 rooms, each room provided a horrible, rigid existence for several other families. Through this place we had to be taken to work. Control when we went out, control when we came in, and when we arrived, special control what we brought in. Maybe we brought in some good food. It was forbidden to bring in fatty foods or milk. These things cost a lot less in the town than in the ghetto. Of course, we existed very badly in the ghetto. We had nothing to sell. We got nothing for our work. The work was difficult. We were half starved. When someone offered something for me to sell, I took it. They gave me a suit to sell. I met with workers who bought it from me and gave me, let's say, 4.5 kilograms for the suit. 4 kilograms I gave to the suit's owner, 0.5 kilogram for myself. But it was a perilous life there, because if they could find butter, meat or pork at yours, they would either kill you or torture you to find out how you got it, and kill you after that. My father worked as a chemist in the ghetto workshops, in the factory. According to his suggestion and under his technological guidance, the mass production of artificial honey was established using potato cuts. The Germans and the ghetto authorities were very pleased. My father never got any material relief except respect, but he was included into the useful Jews list, which could either help you or weaken your alertness and kill you. Our overall home needs were conducted by my 15-year-old sister. She was amazing, since she had no equipment, but she contrived to feed us and to serve us. Quietly, without complaining, she prepared something, and even my 11-year-old brother tried to help. It is not possible to imagine and to understand why this was being done. Why must children be tortured? And, for example, the living conditions. I always think about my father as a little boy then, about that camp. How terrible it must have been for him when the bombs exploded and when they started to murder children. And why did he have to clean the houses of the Jews and sleep in stables? The elder brother came from work. He was taken to forced labour. My father ran to him, kissed him, squeezed his hand and chuckled. So his elder brother asked him, "Why are you so happy? Mother isn't here." He replied, "Mother is not here, but I am happy that you are." In the second half of 1942, the night raids and howling to uncertainty began. Rumours unfolded that Jews had been taken to the next living and working places. According to my non-Jewish work friends, the rumours were hardly reliable, and these people were taken for some suspicious goals. Now we know that they were taken for annihilation in Treblinka, Auschwitz, and other extermination camps. We never believed in and never relied on the useful Jews list, and we didn't have anywhere to run. The ones that were caught were either being hanged or shot. Some of the people turned back. We agreed for the time being to remain secretly in the ghetto. There was no hope of all 4 of us escaping from the ghetto unless a miracle happened. There was not a slimmest chance for salvation. In the daytime, we were at our workplaces. At night, we went somewhere to doze, maybe to sleep, where it was not easy for others to find such a secret place. A complex of cellars, or a wearisome climb into an attic. The searches were not every night, but if we wanted to be saved, we had to hide every night. We were shattered top to bottom. Ultimately, the final stage of the ghetto's liquidation approached. At that time, only about 1,000 people of the 30,000 were left. There was no Sidia Luba, nor any of her family, nor my dear childhood friend, Nokimka, with whom I shared a lot of sweat. We were not taken to work anymore. We accepted a very painful decision. I, with my brother, were now separated from my father and sister. We had to take part in a fighting group. My father and sister had to attempt to escape. Then I saw it was not a fighting group, but a group having lots of family members for a burden, and I decided not to stay with them, to find my father and sister and flee to Lithuania. Mercifully, I found my father and Anna that same month, on February the 18th, 1943, in twilight, gaining thin cover from snow mixed with rain, driven by strong gusts of wind, taking a huge risk, 5 of us. We 4 together with a young man named Yankel, who joined us temporarily, succeeded to cross a series of barbed wire internal fences, separating emptied by then parts of the ghetto, without being spotted by soldier patrols, and to approach the main ghetto fence. There was a shed close to the fencing. We came to the shed and waited until it was dark, because outside the ghetto there was a path on which people went by. We waited and waited until no one was using the path. Then I gave the signal, and we went through the hole in the barbed wire. We slipped away one after another and helped each other to cross the stream. The stream was not deep, but fast, with stony and irregular bottom. Therefore it was easy to slip and fall down there. We conveyed over my father, little brother, and sister. After we crossed, we had to separate, to go up one by one and meet in the street above. It was only then that we thought concretely where to go. We would try to find Maciukewicz in the village of Sventianskis. We needed a miracle to get there. Everything seemed against us, but we hoped to find him. We had no map, no compass, and no detailed trip plan studied and prepared beforehand. We went about 25 kilometers through snowy woodlands, lanes, and traces of lanes. Sometimes we travelled off the tracks, all the time with a real doggish foreboding. In darkness, not asking anyone the way, unerring, we came directly to Matrukavich. It was a miracle. After a couple of days, one night the ice floes on the river Nemesis lessened. Matyukevich, the brother of the one who helped us the first time, also warmly helped us and ferried us over with a rowing boat to the Lithuanian bank of the river. He ferried us over to the place where the river Baltoye Anchia flows into the Nemesis. We went slowly along the path. Suddenly, in the dark, at the turn of a road, a man staggered into view. Our first thoughts were to hide, but we quickly rejected that thought, since we needed help. And that he was tipsy didn't mean anything bad. He was our next guardian angel, Vladas Daugavičius, from the village of Šventijanskas. He raised his head and, disbelieving, rubbed his eyes. After that he said, "Oh, I understand." Then he immediately sobered up and asked, "Where have you come from? Where are you going?" I explained that we were running from Grodno, looking for places, etc., etc., and who we were. He said, "Listen, I'll bring you something to eat," and went away. He came back with his cousin. "Don't be afraid," he said, "this is my cousin." It took us a little while because we had visitors at home and couldn't leave immediately. He pulled out half a loaf of bread and some pork and said, "Refresh yourselves." We began to leave, but he came and stood by us. "I see that you cannot go any further. You will perish. You can stay the night in my stables." The next morning, with a bucket of warm, milky macaroni, nearly all of the Daugavičius family came to us. Mother Rosalia and her sons Jonas and Pranas, Vladas, who we already knew, and her daughter Janina. Jonas was married and was the head of the family. Rosalia saw us and began to cry out of agitation, so that we had to calm her down. All the Kuklianskys family were watched over by angels, who extended their hands to help them. For strangers, they put their own lives in danger, and now nearly all of them lie in the earth in these graves. Vladas Daugavičius was the first one who passed from this world 8 years after the war. It's a pity that Vladas died so young. Stomach cancer. Yes, he died young. We took him to the doctor, but the doctor said there was no hope. Jonas said that he wanted to help us, but didn't know how. He advised us to stay a few days secretly in their potato pit. Of course, we agreed to the potato pit. Those days were very difficult days. It was very cramped. We were huddled together all the time. Sand filtered through the tears in our clothing and covered all the body. Eventually they transferred us into the forest, where they had laboriously dug a bigger covert pit. The Daugavičius family visited us there. They brought us food regularly, worried that we wouldn't starve, and instructed us how to behave, to leave no traces, and how to hide. They told us about the events happening all around. All the day we were in the pit with its disguised entrance closed up. At night we came out for fresh air and to collect water. The pit was purposely prepared far from water, in this case far from the river Baltoye Anchia, since there were many people nearby the bank of the river. In addition, there were often searchers in the water vicinity. Jonas taught us to look after ourselves, and that the forest was not a desert. People came there all the time for their own interests and benefits. After Easter, woodland mushrooms began to grow. Our place became unsafe. The Dogavichus family concluded that we must abandon the pit. He took us to the river Antje and placed us under a big fir tree. But we were soon observed by Jonas Lukashevicius. He discovered us. He also became a guardian angel, Jonas Lukashevicius. This 18-year-old was a superbly developed youth, and also from the village of Kukliansky. When he knew of us, he went home and spoke to his mother, Michalina Lukashevichyni. She was born in Leipalinges. She immediately gave food to him, that he could rush it to us. After a couple of hours, Jonas Lukashevicius came running up, all sweating. He said, "I hurried. I was afraid I wouldn't find you here, that you would have abandoned this place. When I came home, I told my mother that deprived Jewish people had secretly come from Grodno. Mother said to take food to you so you can eat. She gave me a loaf of bread and a jug of milk. Eat." He proposed that his family would help to find a good place in the woods, to dig a pit for us to live there. Food would be provided from the surrounding villages, from poor but sincere farmers that lived by their healthy insight and who did not submit to any sort of agitation. He warranted that if we should knock on any door or window at night, except for a few persons, we would be given food. He promised to consult with his family, especially with its elder brother Stasis, who had experience and standing. Then he would finally agree everything with us. The next day Stasis came, sturdy, intense, a man in his heyday. We couldn't surmise then that our future fate would mean working and associating together. When we told Dogavichus about Lukashevicius' suggestion, they happily endorsed him and asked him to stay in touch. We agreed with Jonas Dogavichus how to communicate. I, needing advice to be given, went to see Dogavichus in his house at night. They often came to visit us, and they always advised and helped us. They were people of great respect. Without their primary help in those surroundings, and their constant support over those times hiding in the woods, we would certainly have perished. Incidentally, it was through Dogavichus, our very first life saviour from this area in 1941, Kazukas Żukauskas found us in the woods. He provided self-made linen shirts for the men and a dress for my sister. Soon after Stasis's visit, Jonas came with tools and food and took us into the woods, the place chosen by him, where it was difficult to approach the river and even more difficult to return from it, at a respectful distance from the villages, except for one small one. Wild boars used to live in that place, where we and Jonas dug out and equipped a pit, similar to the first one, but with some improvements. We reinforced the wall with wadding and props, so that it wouldn't fill with dry sand. It's a custom in our family to know our family history. Not only it, but also the general historical context and our family experiences, the good, the bad, the terrible ones. It's also very important to maintain the links with the families that helped save us. It was my childhood dream to travel to these woods, to meet with the first Jonas, the second Jonas, to see it all with my own eyes, what I knew previously, only as tales. I heard about Veisei from my childhood. I wrote a book and I wanted as many details as possible about the history of my family's salvation. Many people helped them. It was most important that they had their hiding place and that they were sheltered by good people. If not, their escape from Veisei would be useless. Many days I spent with my grandfather. We discussed what events were the most important in his long life path. I'm sure that, indeed, nobody can understand how it's possible to live a year and a half in a pit. If only he himself didn't live there a year and a half. If I had to explain about life in the pit to my friends, I would have to tell a lot of stories and to use numerous examples in attempt to convey some impression of how it is to live in a pit.
Miškuose pusantrų metų būti taip pat buvo nelengva. Kiekvieną dieną buvo pavojus.
1.5 years in the woods was not easy. Every day was dangerous. More dangerous in the beginning, a little less so later, but more dangerous after that. I didn't think that we would survive. To make a fire you need a match, and matches were very expensive things in those times. Not everyone could give us matches. When we did get matches, we split each match into 2 pieces with a knife and used each match twice over. The danger of death was like a guillotine hanging over the throat during all the time spent in the forest's pit. This forced prison required a lot of spiritual strength and a huge desire to live. The frequent question that I receive is, how did you endure the cold? I answered that we had no cold, because the pit was totally under the ground and was covered by a thick layer of sand. The insulation from the outside was good, and it was not cold inside. In summertime it was worse. We felt the lack of air, difficulties in breathing. The largest problem was the lack of food, salt, matches and soap. It was extremely difficult to receive soap. It was much easier to receive food. Then we didn't ask for soap. In any case, we couldn't wash clothes, and it was very dangerous to go and wash ourselves. We tried to scoop up water quickly and immediately go out. We suffered from various parasites, lice, bugs, mosquitoes, and even bed bugs. In summertime, the mosquitoes especially tortured us at night. You hear them approaching, invisible. You feel their bites, but you can't defend. You wait for the daylight. There's no daylight in the pit anyway. And you suffer from these bites, itching, rashes, and swelling all the time. A pit is some kind of lock-up. We lay in minimal space, like herrings in a barrel. We could neither stand nor move, and the sitting position was uncomfortable. We lay directly on the earth, with no mattresses, no bedclothes, nothing at all to lay on. We couldn't uncurl, we couldn't overturn. This forced, constrained physical position had its bad influence on our health, especially mental health. If not mentioning the constant worry and fear of being noticed, that also influenced destructively. We lived worse than animals do. They are used to such conditions, but for us it's a ruin. Most animals avoid people. They don't need them. We couldn't exist without people, but couldn't live with them. You can't recognize good people, separating them from bad ones by a glance, unless they had some corresponding signs. So we feared everybody. The danger of our death sentence continued, and closer the war front approached, and the hope of survival strengthened. But our fear tortured more, and the nervous stress also increased. During those terrible times, it was not only important to get help from outside, but also for the family to stick together. In such tragic circumstances, it was easily possible to break up. My grandfather took care of his children's education even in the pit. He spoke about various composers, sang arias from their operas, and recited poems by Pushkin in the dark depths of the forest. Mostly we went to Sventianskis, Bugiede, Matsavice, and Vilnius villages, and places around those villages. We brought in water every night. When it was not cold, we went barefoot, just like the locals. It was also at night we went to a village once per week. Each time it was a different village, or if it was the same village, to a different farmer. It took 2 of us to bring in water, usually with my sister. I would go alone to the village, or, if it was not far, sometimes with my father. The location of our pit was our highly guarded secret. We had good knowledge of the surroundings and had to orientate in it so that we wouldn't betray ourselves, and no one would know from where we came or where we went. When there was a lot of snow and there were no traces, and when we had enough food for a week, we believed we could survive another week. When there is snow everywhere, it is very difficult for somebody to find you. But when the food ran out, we needed to go out. And to go out only if it was snowing, so as not to leave any footprints for someone to follow us. Anyone could follow our footprints in deep snow, so we had to suffer until it started to snow again. The dogs that bark in the presence of a stranger crossing the village were a problem, with their barking disclosing our presence and indicating the direction we were taking. Experienced Jonas Dogeviches helped us a lot in this field. Generally, we succeeded not to be disclosed. There were rumours that we came from the other side of the river Nemenis. Predominantly, we went to call on Dogeviches. If the fingers of the clock pointed to the window, then that meant I could knock on the window. His mother would open the window to me. Then I climbed through the window into the house. Why through the window? The door faced the neighbour's door, and the neighbours might see. So I climbed in through the window. When I was inside, the family got up, and we could talk. We were helped to remain in the woods with the aid of our lifesavers. The friendliness of those local people, their kindness and sponsorship, and their faculty to keep a secret, even though I noticed this wasn't easy. The majority of the farmers accepted us highly friendly, and I will say hospitable, even though in my opinion we didn't look very decent. They aroused their family from their sleep. I sat at their table. They fed me, entertained me with drinks, gave me food to take away, and invited me to come again. Some even began to reproach. You've been at my neighbour's a long time ago, but you don't visit me. I want to help you, and you, maybe, make me out to be less than my neighbours. Altogether, we had many moving experiences and encounters in the villages. I remember those people with deep sympathy and love. To tell the truth, without their help, we couldn't have survived for 1.5 years in a pit in the woods. There would have been no salvation. Earlier I mentioned 4 villages: Kuklianskis, Bugede, Matsavice and Vilnius, worthy of the highest honours. To me they seemed like a beautiful island surrounded by sharks in the ocean. People were afraid of their neighbours. Honesty and a lot of courage were required for good people not to give in to public pressure. I give deep thanks for what they did for my family. I understood on these travels how terrible the Holocaust was and how important was the help of good people. It was very important that they were wise and understood how to behave and which road to travel. In the middle of July 1944, coping with the various adventures and bearing expanding vigilance, we awaited the Soviet army as it crossed the river Nemenis and forced itself on our Kuklianskis village and the German retreat. I immediately joined the army. Not for revenge, not to kill anyone, but to fight in the normal military situation against the Nazi army. We don't forget our lifesavers, supporters and benefactors. We continue the links with them. We visit them and they visit us, and we help each other. Now we have relationships with their descendants.
Visą laiką džiaugiasi, kai atvažiuodavo aplankyti.
My father was always happy when they came to visit, that they don't forget those good merits. It is clear those were difficult times. There wasn't much to share with them. 15 of the Kuklianskys family life saviours were acknowledged with the medals of Righteous Among Nations from Yad Vashem. They and 3 more people also received the Life Saviour's Cross from the President of the Republic of Lithuania, Valdas Adamkus, most of them posthumously. The Life Saviour's children accepted their parents' awards. We waited many years for this day. It came to fruition just how we wanted, to thank our life savers publicly. This day is a holiday for me and my family. In my life I've encountered various human actions and people. I remember evil as well as kindness. Even though I can't forget the evil, I have to say that kindness moves me very much. Each time I remember a good person or action, my heart seems to ache. It gets hard for me to talk or even think about this person, and against my will, my eyes get wet. I almost pity him. This goes on each time I remember Karolis Yarmala giving us shelter. When I see Kazis Zhukauskas running towards us, to warn us that the bridge we want to cross is watched by guards and offering to take us to the other side of the river with his boat. When I think about a number of people who helped us to fight death for life in our way of torment and horror.